Hi there, Daily Gardeners. Real quick, I just wanted to remind you that this month, the month of April, is the Reviews for Good month over at podchaser.com. And every time you leave a review and then I reply to that review, Podchaser will donate 50 cents to World Central Kitchen. And that's the organization that is providing meals to people fleeing Ukraine. And so far, they've provided over 1 million meals. So great cause. Take a second today, if you have a chance, and leave a review for the Daily Gardener over at podchaser.com. It's so easy to do, and so much good can come from it. Today's episode is brought to you by the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about garden history and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 11th. Today in garden history, we celebrate the birthday of the English poet Christopher Smart, who was born on this day, April 11th in 1722. Christopher was known by his pen name as the midwife Mrs. Mary Midnight, and the back half of his life was spent in madhouses or prisons. Christopher wrote his long religious poem known as Rejoice in the Lamb in debtor's prison, and it includes these words: "For the flowers are great blessings, for there is a language of flowers, and for the flowers are peculiarly the poetry of Christ." And it was in this same poem that Christopher praised his beloved cat, Geoffrey. Now, the Geoffrey verses recently inspired a man named Oliver Soden to write a whimsical biography of Geoffrey, and that debuted back in April of last year to the delight of cat lovers everywhere. Now, before he wrote Rejoice in the Lamb, Christopher published a very long poem. It had 733 lines, and it was called The Hop Garden. Now, this poem came out in 1752, and what's significant about this poem today is that in the poem, Christopher tells his reader how to grow hops. So the poem is part personal history, since Christopher grew up knowing how to grow hops, and also part instruction. In the hop garden, Christopher mentions that there was a river that ran past his childhood garden. And in fact, he dedicates the whole second half of the poem to his dear friend, Theophilus Wheeler. Christopher was actually right in the middle of writing The Hop Garden when Theophilus died during his sophomore year at Christ College. After The Hop Garden was published, Christopher's friend Samuel Johnson humorously said that the poem was proof that one could say a great deal about cabbage. But all kidding aside, Christopher shared many stories about what it was like to grow hops. In fact, there's one passage that shares about a time when a storm threatened the harvest. Christopher wrote, "Hasten then, ye peasants, pull the poles, the hops, where are the bins?" And then he writes, "Run, run, ye nimble maids, move every muscle, every nerve extend, to save our crop from ruin and ourselves." Well, sadly, Christopher's story did not end well. He died in debtor's prison in London in 1771 at 49 years old. And today we remember the English plant collector and gardener David Burke, who died on this day, April 11th in 1897. When David was a young man, the Veitch nurseries had become obsessed with the painting of a pitcher plant, Nepenthes northiana, by Marianne North. Well, after Marianne died, Veitch sent David on his first collecting trip with another collector named Charles Curtis. Now, these two men were supposed to bring back specimens of the North pitcher plant. Now, during the trip, David discovered the beautiful Lea amabilis, which is nowadays a popular tropical houseplant. It features dark leaves, so if you're looking for dark foliage, this would be an option. And these leaves have a very jagged shape. They're very architectural, and they have a white color along the midrib. Now, long after this trip, David continued to travel extensively for James Veitch and Sons, and he was later honored with the naming of a pitcher plant that he had discovered, and it was called the Nepenthes burkei. And another plant that David is remembered for is a plant that he collected in the Philippines, Phalaenopsis stewartania. David found this orchid growing abundantly along the coastline, and apparently it thrived being sprayed by the ocean. Well, the Veitch firm knew very well that they were extraordinarily lucky to have David Burke collecting for them. He had a maniacal focus on collecting plants. In fact, the Veitch firm wrote these words about David. This traveler, Burke, crossed a greater area of the Earth's surface and covered more miles in search of plants than any other Veitchian collector, with the possible exception of the two brothers, William and Thomas Lobb. And the writer Sue Shepard, who wrote a biography of the Veitch family, described David as Veitch's strangest, longest-serving, and most adventurous orchid collector. Well, now, of course, if you were going to be a plant collector in the 1800s, you had to be prepared to rough it because the conditions that these plant explorers endured were just incredibly difficult. James Veitch once remarked about how David seemed remarkably unfazed by all of it. He wrote, "David Burke was one of those curious natures who live more or less with natives as a native, and apparently preferred this mode of existence." In 1896, David left on what was to be his final voyage, and he ended up dying doing what he loved. He died of cholera on Ambon Island on this day in 1897. And today we celebrate the birthday of Elsie Esterhuysen, the South African botanist who was born on this day, April 11th, in 1912. Elsie's been described as the most outstanding collector of South African flora, and she collected over 36,000 herbarium species. A botanist at the Bolus Herbarium in Cape Town, Elsie was beyond humble, and she would never publish the results of her work under her own name. After Elsie died, over 200 people gathered at her memorial, which featured 3 tributes from her botanist family. The botanist John Rourke recalled, "It's an astonishing fact that for the first 18 years of her employment, Elsie received no proper salary and was paid out of petty cash at a rate not much better than a laborer. She did not collect randomly. Elsie was, above all, an intelligent collector, filling voids in the Bolus Herbarium records. One of her favorite comments was, 'I'm only filling in gaps.'" And then the botanist Peter Linder said this about Elsie. "She was what I thought a botanist was supposed to be. She was in the mountains every weekend and came back with big black plastic bags full of plants. Elsie taught me that each species has an essence, a character. She was interested in the plants themselves. She cared about them." And then the botanist Ted Oliver remembered this. "Elsie's mode of transport was the bicycle. She rode to the University of Cape Town up that dreadful steep road every day for a lifetime, come sunshine or rain, heat or cold. Now one knows why she was so fit and could outstrip any poor, unsuspecting younger botanist in the mountains." Every day she would come up and park her bicycle behind the Bolus Herbarium building and then often jump through the window in the preparation section rather than walk all the way around to the front door. Isn't that great? Well, today there are 56 plant species and 2 genera named for Elsie. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Ladies' Village Improvement Society Cookbook. This book came out in 2020, and the subtitle is Eating and Entertaining in East Hampton. Well, this is another book that I wish had debuted before the pandemic because I think it would have been so much more popular had it come out, say, in 2018. But nonetheless, it's not too late to discover this fabulous cookbook. It is a cookbook for all seasons, but I think the cover just screams summer and eating outside in your garden. So if you're going to get this book, now is the time. Now, the foreword to this cookbook was written by Martha Stewart, and I wanted to read to you just a little bit about what she talks about here because she's introducing us to the LVIS, or the Ladies Village Improvement Society. And this group of women have done so much to make sure that the natural beauty of the Hamptons stays intact. And Martha alludes to it here in this foreword. She writes, I bought my home on Lily Pond Lane almost 30 years ago. Much has changed in East Hampton since then. Many new houses have been built and countless new stores have opened on Main Street and Newton Lane. The summer populations have swelled and the beaches have become more crowded. But some things have remained the same. The giant elm trees that tower over the highway leading into town are still green and stately. The roadsides are still planted with lovely maples and lindens, offering shady avenues and streets on which to walk or bicycle. The scenic village green and its iconic pond, populated by pairs of plump swans, are still the backdrop for many thousands of photographs throughout the year. And the Ladies Village Improvement Society can claim bragging rights for the glory of this scenery. Well, there is no better time to be in East Hampton than in midsummer when the trees are leafed out and the roses are blooming and the ocean, of course, is beautiful. And then there are the farmers markets and the farm stands that are displaying their freshly harvested vegetables. It's a beautiful sight to see. And as Martha indicated, this volunteer organization, the Ladies Village Improvement Society, has done a lot to make sure that the Hamptons retains its natural charm. Now, a lot of these women are gardeners and cooks, and so you can imagine the wonderful recipes, the over 100 recipes that are in this fabulous cookbook, because a lot of them are garden to table. And you know, the other thing that's really fun about this book is the Hamptons is all about entertaining. And so these women are sharing their go-to recipes for all kinds of gatherings. Whether you're talking about dinner after a movie or lunch by the pool, whatever the occasion, there are delightful suggestions here. There's a fettuccine recipe that's got asparagus and blue cheese. There's a fabulous bittersweet chocolate pound cake. Bonnie Rife Smith shared her recipe for perfection pork chops. There's a wonderful zucchini sausage quiche. So another great recipe for using your zucchini. Let's see here. Oh, there's Moroccan carrot salad. Oh, and a fabulous sunflower seed salad. Whole roasted cauliflower. That's fantastic as well. Anyway, I could go on and on. This beautiful cookbook is so fun. It's 256 pages of more than 100 recipes for food and drink, and it's all put together in 20 different menus with directions on how to make any of your gatherings extra special. And it really is a beautiful cookbook for summer. And the price is right, too. You can get a used copy of the Ladies Village Improvement Society Cookbook by Florence Fabricant and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $9. But of course, as with any of the books that I recommend, if you want a used copy at that price, you're going to have to act quickly because they will go fast. All right, we end today's show with a Botanic Spark that features a dedication ceremony that was held at the University of South Carolina on this day, April 11th, back in 2014. The ceremony was in honor of the new desegregation commemorative garden on the side of the Osborne building. The garden was established to commemorate the 50th anniversary of desegregation at the college. Well, during the ceremony, Student Government President Lindsay Richardson read a poem by University of South Carolina poet Nikki Finney, and it was called The Irresistible Ones, and it's inscribed on the granite plaque in the garden, and it reads, "The Irresistible Ones, Robert Anderson, Henry Monteith, James Solomon. They arrive knocking at Osborne's great garnet door. They want to study mathematics, join the debate team, and sing in the choir. There are 3 in a sea of 6,000. With each step, they pole vault shards of doubt, sticks of dynamite, and stubborn hate mail. With them arrives the bright peppermint of change. The new laws of the new day can no longer resist these 3 irresistible ones in a sea of 6,000, stepping through a door now garnet and black." Well, that's it for today's show. Just remember that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. The next time you're over at Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. And if you'd like more of The Daily Gardener, you can subscribe to the newsletter over at thedailygardener.org. And don't forget that you can also show your support for the show by using the Buy Me a Coffee link over at the website or in today's show notes. This is Jennifer Ebling. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.